All right, so I've summarized these fundamental trig identities in a table here. So it kind of looks like a lot to remember, but it's not that bad. Okay, so if you look at these first two, secant of theta is 1 over cosine of theta. All right, so secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So I feel like the other one kind of follows naturally. If secant is the reciprocal of cosine, then cosine is the reciprocal of secant, okay? They're reciprocals of each other. So I feel like that's just one thing to memorize. If you remember that secant is the reciprocal of cosine, then it's pretty easy that, okay, well then the cosine is the reciprocal of secant. So you don't need to memorize both. They just need to remember that secant and cosine are reciprocals of each other. All right, same way with cosecant. Again, the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Okay, so if you remember that, that means that the sine is the reciprocal of cosecant and the reciprocals of each other. And so just remember the one thing. All right, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, so now again, if cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, then tangent is the reciprocal of cotangent. Okay, so I feel like that's not, you don't have to memorize two things. Just remember that cotangent of theta and tangent of theta are reciprocals of each other. All right, now we already learned that we learned that the tangent is also the sine over the cosine. Okay, so that's a good one to remember. And if the tangent is the or if the cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, right, then cotangent has to be, you know, flip it, right? We're just going to flip it. So cotangent is cosine of theta over sine of theta. All right. So again, I don't feel like, you need to memorize both of those. Just remember that, the tangent of theta is the sine of theta over cosine of theta. And if we want the cotangent, we could just flip it. Okay. Because that cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. All right, now we talked about these Pythagorean identities. I don't really bother remembering these other ones. I just, like I said, I just sort of, I know how to get them. I know they exist and sometimes they're useful, but I feel like the sine squared of theta plus the cosine of theta squared of theta equals 1 is the most useful. So that's kind of what I go with. All right. That's kind of what I remember, and then I know how to get the other ones if I need them. All right, so given these fundamental identities, if we know one trigonometric function and the quadrant that the angle is in, we can find all of the other trigonometric functions at that angle. Okay, so just like we did, well, we did something like this. We did something like this in the last section where we were given cosine, and we were just asked to find sine. But if you've got cosine and sine, then you can find all 6, right? You've got all 6 of the trig functions, right? Because they're all related to each other. So let's go through an example here. We have the cosine of theta is a negative 3/5, and it's asking what are the exact values for all these other trig functions for when the angle is between pi and 3 pi over 2. All right, so pi and 3 pi over 2. All right, we can draw a little unit circle. Pi here is, we got to figure out where that is. We got to know what quadrant it is, right? So this is pi, and this is 3 pi over 2. So let me just mark it here. So this is the quadrant that we're in. That's quadrant, that's quadrant 3. Okay, so both the sine and the cosine are negative in quadrant 3. So this is quadrant 3. All right, so now let's do what we did before, right? If we know the Pythagorean identity, so we know that sine squared of theta plus the cosine squared of theta equals 1. But the cosine of theta is a negative 3/5, okay? And that's equal to 1. Oops, we got to square that. Negative 3/5 squared. So now we can solve for sine of theta. Well, we'll solve for sine squared of theta first. So I'm going to, now when I square the negative 3/5, I'm going to get 9/25. So I'm actually going to rewrite 1 as 25 over 25, okay? And then I'm going to subtract that 9/5 from both sides. So just remember, when you square a negative, you're going to get a positive, but then we're subtracting it from both sides. So I'm going to get 9 over 25. And that, well, let's write it down here, sine squared of theta is then 16 over 25. Now, when I take the square root of both sides, I get sine of theta is equal to either 4/5 or a negative 4/5. So then we have to decide which one. Which one is it? Now, we already said that this angle, it says this angle is in the third quadrant. It's between pi and 3 pi over 2. So we already said that it's in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 3, both sine and cosine, right, both the x and the y coordinates are negative. So both the sine and the cosine are negative. So I'm going to cross that one out, right? So I'm just going to get the negative 4/5. All right, so that answers this question, negative 4/5. Okay, now the tangent. Let's do the tangent of theta now. We know the tangent of theta is equal to the sine of theta, which is a negative 4/5, over the cosine of theta, which is a negative 3/5. All right, so now negative divided by negative is going to be positive. So I'm just going to, let's make these both positive now because they're going to cancel. The negatives will cancel each other out. We'll end up with 4/5. Oops, not 4/4. 4/5 times, and then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 5/3. Cancel the 5s, and we're going to end up with a positive 4/3. So the tangent in the third quadrant is positive. Right? We're going to get a positive 4/3. Now, the rest of these are pretty straightforward. So remember that this is 1 over sine. So I'll just maybe write it over here. 1 over sine of theta. Okay, this is 1 over sine of theta. So we're going to get 1 over that negative. I'll write it out. 1 over a negative 4/5. Again, but it's just the reciprocal. So that's a negative 5/4. Okay. And then the secant is 1 over cosine of theta, okay? And so we're going to get 1 over the cosine, and we were given the cosine, so that's a negative 3/5. So again, it's just the reciprocal, so I'm just going to get a negative 5/3. And then the cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So 1 over tangent of theta. So I'm going to take the tangent that I found, 4/3, and I'm going to just flip it over. All right, I could write it out, but you'll get in the habit of just flipping these things over. So 4/3 gives us 3/4. Okay, so there we go. We took the cosine and we were able to find all the other trig functions given the quadrant that the angle was in. All right, so I'll meet you for the next video.